Hi, my name is Amber Tuttle, and I chose for my ISM paper and presentation to research and write about the difference in social class and the language gap. And what that means is kids from lower income families and higher poverty populations are coming and beginning school knowing a lot less words and a lot less vocabulary than their more affluent peers. And the reason I chose this is it's interesting to me because I have served as a teacher in high poverty Title I schools, as well as Head Start and pre-K in the West End of Louisville. So I've really seen this in person, this effect that this gap in word knowledge has and how it really affects the later literacy skills later in elementary. So just some terms to really understand before I continue is socioeconomic status, or SES, you'll hear me talk about in my presentation. And this is the social standing or class of an individual or group, often measured as a combination of education, income, and occupation. And that was found by the American Psychological Association in 2015. The word or language gap is having or knowing fewer words than more affluent peers, which puts children at a disadvantage right from the beginning. And this was shown and really researched by Betty Hart and Todd Risley in 2003. And they wrote a whole book about it called The 30 Million Word Gap. So my questions for this paper were, why are students from lower socioeconomic status households often entering school already behind in language and vocabulary skills? And then what can we do about closing this language gap and ensuring all children gain the literacy skills needed to be successful? So I want to start by talking about what exactly is the language or the word gap. And there's been lots of research on this topic. Some well-known ones, Isabel Beck, Margaret McCone, Todd Risley, and Betty Hart were really some of the main ones that I found while researching this topic. And in some of their studies, they found that first graders from higher SES backgrounds knew at least twice as many words as lower SES children. And that's in first grade. And then by high school, senior, near the top of their class, so seniors coming from often more affluent, more professional, or at least working class homes, knew about 4 times as many words as their lower performing classmates. And these were often the students who were living in poverty or English language learners as well, which sometimes can be both an ESL student and living in poverty. And so as you can see that they started already behind in first grade. By high school, they were even more behind in their word knowledge. And within a year's time period, children from professional homes are exposed to about 11.2 million words. Children from working class homes are exposed to 6.5 million words. And children from welfare or lower income homes are exposed to 3.2 million words. So you can see just that vast difference in how many words kids are being exposed to within those homes. And there are a lot of different factors to that. In lower income homes, often parents are very busy. They have several jobs and they aren't spending as much time with their child, even though they may want to. Maybe they're not reading with their child, or their children often aren't going to high quality preschool programs as well. This is kind of just a visual to go along with the research from Hart and Risley, and this is from 1995, and it just really shows you that disparity between how many words, and it's in millions, so how many cumulative words were spoken to a child in 48 months between professional homes, working class homes, and low-income homes. And it's just a vast difference in how many words these kids are hearing before they even enter school. So what can we do to close this gap? In my research, I found kind of 4 things that we can do in schools and as educators to try to help to get these kids to improve their vocabulary and their word knowledge. And that is strong and equal reading instruction in all schools, dialogic teaching, earlier intervention, and family involvement. So one of the first things that I found in my research is that a lot of schools that service more urban areas, more high poverty populations, they have what's called a lack of a print-rich environment. So they found that a lot of the walls were more bare. The books weren't as plentiful, and they weren't as high quality of texts within the classroom. And so one thing we need to do is ensure that students are learning in a print-rich environment, that there's lots of print on the walls, lots of anchor charts, posters, high quality books, lots of access to books within the classroom and within the school. They also found that in these schools, they tend to focus on mechanical and procedural skills, and such as like decoding words and being able to read words, but they didn't really focus on conceptual and knowledge-based skills. They didn't really teach strategies to understand the meanings of words and figure out the meanings of words. Then we also need to focus on teaching students to be word learners and not just word callers. We want them to think critically about their reading and to really try to figure out how to understand what they're reading and not just being able to decode the words. Another thing is dialogic teaching. And in a book I read called Literacy with an Attitude, which I read for another course, it's by Patrick Finn from 2009, and it really spends a lot of time talking about this topic. And one piece of advice he offers is to avoid what's called gatekeeping, and he defined that as prohibiting expression on part of the students until they've conformed to school standards or correctness. And I really feel like that goes a lot with what we have learned in this equity class about valuing a student's culture, a student's language, how they speak, how their family speaks, and the members of their culture speak, and how it may not be the exact way that we would expect them to speak. And so we really want to not limit them in their expression because of that. We also need to provide ample opportunities for students to discuss and share their thinking around texts and assignments. We want to encourage open dialogue between students and between teachers and students, and we want to give some choice and freedom, include a lot of opportunities for students to discuss and be self-directed in their learning. We really want to encourage expression and critical thinking and discussion within our classroom, giving those kids that opportunity to really do the talking a lot. Another thing that I found a lot of research on is earlier intervention. We often will intervene when we're seeing deficits and issues later in elementary or middle school, but we kind of ignore those red flags early on, like in pre-K or in K. And so we need to work to identify students in preschool who are already lacking language and vocabulary skills. We need to find a way to provide early language supports to that student or those students in the preschool and who are just into kindergarten. And we need to find a way for schools to apply an RTI model approach at an earlier age to help students catch up, rather than waiting for them to show large deficits later in elementary. I know I've spoken up for some of my students who I know they're having issues, they're behind, they're struggling, but they tell us, oh, well, for the ACE process and for this, that, we really want to see that it's affecting them by at least 2 years. Well, in kindergarten, they're not going to be 2 years behind because it's kindergarten, but they can already be behind. And then finally, one that covers all kinds of topics that I'm sure we've all worked on for our ISM papers, and that's family involvement. We need to provide literacy support and strategies in the form of take-home books, modeling, handouts of strategies and skills to work on. We need to provide our families these things in order to teach them how to support their child's literacy development at home, because a lot of parents from these lower income populations, they kind of already have a bad feeling about school, or maybe they've had a bad experience. So we also want to create a school environment where they feel welcome and comfortable to come and regularly support their children. We want to provide workshops and programs, such as one in my old school called Partners in Print, where families come in and learn how to support their child's reading and language at home, what they can do to help. And finally, I just found this quote that I thought really went along with this topic, and it's, young children need writing to help them learn about reading. They need reading to help them learn about writing, and they need oral language to help them learn about both. So that oral language piece is huge, especially in early childhood and early elementary, because without that, they are going to struggle later in those other reading and writing skills. Thank you.